Now we saw like all the theory part about password encoder in the last few videos. So let's try to implement one of the password encoder, which is Bcrypt password encoder inside our application and leverage it to authenticate our credentials inside our application. For that, first I have to go to the place where we have configured password encoder with the standard password encoder. So instead of standard password encoder, I will be configuring Bcrypt password encoder. So as we discussed, Bcrypt password encoder has a constructor which don't need any arguments to pass. So with this, from coding, I am good, like my application is good to use Bcrypt password encoder. And as we discussed, my code should stop at matches method for validating the passwords between what we stored in the database and what we are receiving from the UI. So that's why I just kept a breakpoint here. So let's try to start our application in debug mode. So meanwhile, let's go and see what users we have in the database. We have a customer table, and inside that we have an email that we configured previously, which is john.example.com, and his password is 54321. Now we have our server started. Let's try to go to the browser and try to access my account service. So it's asking me credentials. I'm giving my username, which is john.example.com, and password is 54321. As soon as I click sign in, the code will stop at matches method. So here, the raw password is the one which we are receiving from the UI, and encoded password is the one which we have in the database. So now let's try to see what is happening inside this method. So raw password is not a null and encoded password is also not a null. And here I am getting an error saying that whatever you stored inside the database is not a bcrypt encoded password. So that's why my login will fail though my credentials are right, with an error saying that encoded password does not look like bcrypt. The reason is you are telling the Spring Security go ahead and leverage the bcrypt hashing mechanism for validating the credentials. But you are still saving the password in a plain text inside the database. So that's why Spring Security is saying I can't go ahead and validate because the encoded password which is in the database is not a hash of type bcrypt function. So due to that, we are getting this error. For that, let's try to go ahead and update our password in a bcrypt hashing mechanism so that our Spring Security also can leverage it and validate the password. For that, let's go to our database. But right now we have a problem with our customer table because customer table password is of length 45 only. The column length is 45 only, but ideally we need more than that to store a hash value of a password. So for that, let me drop my this table, drop table customer. So I have executed drop table customer. Now we have to create a table again customer. For that, let's go to our scripts location. Here I have a definition of it. Let me copy paste that. So here password length instead of 45, I'm just keeping it as 200 for safer side. I'm just creating the table. Post that I can go ahead and insert the same value, but here John Doe does not have a password inside a database in a hashing way. So let's try to create a new username, which is happy@example.com, and for him, I want to keep it the password as 12345, and his role also can be admin. But I really don't know what is the hash value of 12345 in Bcrypt algorithm. So there are two ways. One is if you are implementing user details manager where you can call create user, the framework will take care of saving the password in a hashed value since you are declaring that the password encoder should be bcrypt password encoder. But in this scenario, since we don't have that code, what we can do is let's try to go to a website. This is the website where we can generate a hash value of an simple text. So for that, I'm just giving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is my simple text, and rounds I'm keeping it as 12 because even in bcryptor password encoder, the coefficient value that we used to pass in the second constructor by default it's a 12. So this 12 indicates that those many logarithmic times that my encoding has to happen. So as soon as I click hash, I got a hash value. I'm just copying it. Now instead of 12345, I'm just storing it into the database, the hash value, and I'm inserting it. So now I will go ahead and log in with happy@example.com and password is 12345. Now I click sign in. This time it stopped again matches. So here the raw password is 12345 and you can see this is the encoded password that we stored in the database. So by this time my Spring Security might have called load user by username and it is having the password in the form of encode password here. So now I will check line by line. So it's not a null raw password. Encoded password is also null, is not a null. And my encoded password is matching with the Bcrypt pattern. Now, so this is the method where it will compare whether my plain text value and the hashed value is same or not. For that, what it will do is first it will take the hash value and it will call the hash password method with the password that we received from the UI on the salt. So once that hashing is completed, it will return a Boolean value since the hashes of both encoded password and what we calculated based upon the raw password is matching. It will return a Boolean true, which indicates that we should allow the authentication of this user. So that's why in the UI, this time we are getting the authentication response for my account service. So this is how we should configure any password encoder. And you can see it's very easy. You just have to define what is a password encoder that I have to follow. And accordingly, you should maintain the values either in the database or in LDAP server. So Spring Security is taking a lot of pain from developers so that they can focus on business requirement, and it is taking care of all the passwords management here. But if you have a requirement where you want to have your own custom password encoder, you are free to implement the password encoder provided by framework, and inside that you have to override the two methods encode and matches so that framework will call your methods whenever it tries to validate the user credentials. So this is the way how you should configure the password encoders. Thank you and see you in the next video. Bye.